I've been long overdue for a Star Wars video on this channel, and there have been several routes I've wanted to take over the past year, and hopefully we will get to some of those in the future. But today I wanted to talk about how closely the Jedi and the Jedi Council can resemble that of Christians and the Church. Now, it's not an exact one-to-one since a lot of the Jedi philosophy stems from Eastern religions as well as Western, but there are some similarities to how outsiders view the Jedi and the Jedi Council to how outsiders might view Christians and the Christian Church. In our culture, Christianity is always on the defensive. It must justify its existence to a culture who doesn't agree with it. They don't like the God it represents and believes that the world would be better off without it. Is the galaxy better without the standards of the Jedi? Is our culture better without the standards of Christianity? Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, my name is Holden Hardman. I'm the pop culture Christian. I find God everywhere, even in the most unlikely places. I came across this article from CBR and was just shocked by some of the takes. It immediately reminded me of the treatment of Christians. They're very good at twisting what is obviously good and making it seem evil, and then taking what is obviously evil and making it seem good. The Bible even gives an explicit warning about this in the Old Testament. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. So I wanted to talk about some of the issues that the article brings up regarding the Jedi, and I'm not going to do every single one, just the ones that I thought were the heaviest hitters. And the article makes the argument that the Jedi are actually the evil and corrupt ones, and the Sith are actually the misunderstood good guys. It might be a little rough around the edges, but there's reasons for it. The Sith give power to the powerless. One of the Sith's most redeeming qualities is their willingness to embrace power in all its forms. This levels the playing field against otherwise impossible opponents that they would not be able to thwart through Jedi morality, and is sometimes even applied for defense rather than attack. Is embracing power in all its forms a good thing? You'll notice in critiques for both Jedi and Christians that it's only immoral if your opponent is doing it. This is one of the benefits of moral relativism, because you can decide when something is moral so long as it suits you. This argues that it's a redeeming quality for Sith to embrace power in all its forms, but I would argue that it's corrupt for anyone to embrace power in all its forms. It's a part of the Jedi standard, for example, to show restraint. But imagine if they wanted to take power in all its forms, politically, socially, philosophically. Then suddenly, there's no mistake that they're evil in doing so. But for a Sith to embrace power in all its forms, the word this author uses is redeeming, implying that it's not only a desirable trait, but one that's worth striving towards. We can see the same thing culturally with Christians. We don't want Christianity shoved down people's throats because that's pushing your beliefs onto other people, and doing that is morally wrong. But secular culture can teach, display, promote, parade, whatever they see fit, because they claim a moral superiority to Christianity, despite the cognitive dissonance in claiming that morality is relative. By their own reasoning, Christians can't be immoral by shoving their beliefs down people's throats, because morality is just a point of view. This is the hypocrisy of secularism. They want Christianity stifled and silent, but their views, beliefs, practices, dogmas spread far and wide. It is immoral for a Christian to be proud and vocal about their God, but morally imperative for them to be proud and vocal about their secular philosophy. They're categorically hypocrites, and they're not called on it enough. The Jedi rebuke emotions. One of the core tenets of the Jedi Order is there is no emotion, there is peace. This might sound superficially intellectual, but it often inhibits their ability to act in the interest of the greater good, with calamitous results. An example comes from their mistreatment of Anakin, namely by Mace Windu. Despite how he had served the Council faithfully, Windu talked down to him, bludgeoned him with his authority to bend him into submission. If he had considered Anakin's feelings, he may have been able to subvert his wrath and prevent his later betrayal. There is no emotion, there is peace is clearly not a Christian tenet, but a Buddhist one. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of all suffering. Non-attachment is the concept that involves letting go of your attachments to things like material possessions, relationships, thoughts, and even emotions. While Christians agree with Buddhists that materialism is a pathway to lacking fulfillment, Christians are encouraged, you could argue even commanded, to love everyone, even their enemies. The alternative, Sith philosophy, is that of attaining power at any cost. So it is within their code to hurt, take advantage of, or murder anyone that gets in the way of them attaining their goals. It's not uncommon, and it's even a rite of passage, for a Sith apprentice to murder their master. It's ironic because secularly, it is often emotion that trumps reason. Even their example of Mace Windu and Anakin. Mace Windu, who I'm not an apologist for, does speak more candidly than, say, the gentleness that Obi-Wan or Yoda might, but he didn't do anything wrong. As Mace Windu even pointed out, the Council agreed he was not ready for the rank of Master, not just him. Because Anakin could not control his emotions, he lashed out, acted like an immature child, and proved to the Council that they made the right choice. If he had considered Anakin's feelings, he may have been able to subvert his wrath and prevent his later betrayal, is a wicked, stupid take. It's Mace Windu's fault that Anakin can't take no for an answer. And it wasn't even a no, it was actually a not yet. But when we have a culture that teaches that immediate gratification is a good thing, I'm sure it would seem like the Jedi were being evil here from the perspective of a child. The Sith embrace individuality. While a Sith apprentice might be obliged to obey their master, their creed overall is much more liberating than that of their Jedi counterparts. It empowers them to explore their interests and enjoy the fruits of their labor, rather than expecting them to bottle their passions for the sake of a council that doesn't appreciate them. An example comes from the ambitions demonstrated by Darth Maul in his usurping of Death Watch and its grip over Mandalore. Through the power he had learned under Lord Sidious, the Force had, quite literally, set him free. This is another example of how our culture has become more superficial. Despite what our non-religious counterparts claim, they can be very religious themselves. They have idols, they have worship, they have dogma, and they do not tolerate blasphemy against their gods. In our culture, the most important thing is you. You are your own God. This is preached, practiced, and celebrated everywhere. Speak your truth. Find yourself. You are enough. Look inwards towards yourself. Morality is relative unless it offends you personally. If you are not happy, leave. Leave your marriage. Place yourself first always. You are your own master and you serve yourself. If you are made second to anyone, or if anyone's opinions or perspectives trump yours, that is immoral, blasphemous, and worth fighting against. Compared to a Jedi Council or being subservient to a god who is greater than you, the idea of being your own god or your own master is very appealing to a lot of people. I've heard from atheists that Christianity can feel extremely binding, and that's one of the big turnoffs for them. I don't want God telling me what I can or can't do. And, fair enough. I actually really understand that point of view. I would argue, though, that they're looking at the problem wrong. The rights of Christianity aren't limiting at all. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. That's why you'll constantly hear from atheists who become Christians how freeing it is. That's their words. How freeing it is. I would argue that the freedom found in atheism is much more demonstrably an ensnaring trap than the rights of Christianity. Consider that you're wanting to learn how to play the guitar. You pick up the instrument and you're enamored with the strings and the feel of it. You try to play something coherent, but it's out of tune. You don't know where to put your fingers, so you decide to learn how to play. You begin to study music theory, learn how to read sheet music, or learn how to download tabs off of guitartabs.com. You learn how to tune the strings properly. You learn the rules of music. Well, then you have somebody else that wants to learn how to play the guitar too. And this person says, I'm not going to do all that. I don't want to be bound by the rules. I want to do it my way. I want to be free. While that person might look down on you for following the rules and being bound by them, only you will ever be able to create beautiful music. As free as your counterpart may be, they will never be able to make anything that you can. The same thing can be said about Christians. We are not bound or limited by Christ, even with following his teachings. We are liberated by Christ. And you are not free when you reject him in favor of yourself. You enslave yourself. Jedi have a willingness to manipulate others. When Qui-Gon wanted to pay for a generator, he offered Republic credits to Watto, who had shown him hospitality until that point. When Watto refused, as government money was relatively useless on the desert planet of Tatooine, he attempted to use the Force to make him agree to the deal. Essentially, he intended to steal it with a clean conscience. While one could attempt to divorce Qui-Gon's actions from those of the Council, it is important to remember that he was a Jedi Master. Therefore, the Order had condoned his actions, highlighting their corruption. I'm glad that the author pointed out that Qui-Gon's actions likely wouldn't have been condoned by the Council, but also claiming that because he did it, the Council therefore condones it anyway. You can't have it both ways, man. But it's also funny to me that he describes Watto as being very hospitable to Qui-Gon. Watto was a slave owner. This is another case of, I only use these arguments if it benefits me, even if it's wildly inconsistent. I just want consistency. Could you imagine this person's take if a Jedi owned a slave? I guarantee it wouldn't matter how hospitable they were. Regardless, Qui-Gon would use his power to free Anakin from slavery and also attempted to free his mother as well. This is also the case of using a single Jedi's actions to condemn the group as a whole. Show me anywhere in the Jedi Code where manipulation, especially manipulation for personal gain, is encouraged. This is a stance that I like to call atheist privilege. Because atheism is a worldview, it's a worldview without God, you can get varying types. Denominations, if you will. They can critique, criticize, and blame an individual Christian's actions and apply that sin to the larger group of Christianity, highlighting the corruption within. A pastor in Nevada secretly has a mistress and gets caught. All of Christianity looks bad as a result. An atheist schoolteacher molests a child. That's just that person. It doesn't reflect atheism as a whole. Atheists can point to the hypocrisy of Christianity because it's very common for Christians to fail to live up to that standard, but they fail to acknowledge that they can only be hypocrites because they have a moral standard in the first place. So the atheist is free to point out the transgressions of individual Christians, despite those actions failing to live up to the standards of Christianity, but then they conclude that it's better to not have the standards at all. We can see the same thing from a non-religious perspective too. You can have 99 police officers who try to serve and protect, and then one police officer who acts heinously. The entire police force gets dragged because of this one officer. ACAB, defund the police, all that, and then they conclude that it's better to not have the police in the first place. The principle is the same, and it's just as stupid. Sith want to sustain life. Despite how the Jedi claim to preserve life, the Sith have advanced far beyond simply defending it. Through the genius of Darth Plagueis, they have uncovered the secret to extending their own mortality and even create new life from the Force. These techniques could lead to revolutionary medical advances, though the Jedi fear their unorthodox means too much to attempt them. Because of this, they place their hubris over the sanctity of that which they purport to protect, arrogance which would later turn Anakin against them. As you mentioned, the individuals who uncover the secret of extending their own life or even creating new life from the Force only do so selfishly. They will not lead to revolutionary medical advancements, and they have not done so except at preserving their own lives. Also, the Jedi not wanting to take routes that unnaturally extend life is not hubris. And also, the only people responsible for Anakin's actions are Anakin. This person keeps trying to blame Anakin's actions on everyone else but Anakin. Jedi are theocratic militants. The Jedi Order was allegedly assembled only to keep the peace, though given their involvement in the Clone Wars, this is a dubious claim at best. They have led countless attacks against the enemies of the Republic, working as political agents in service of Palpatine's agenda. Their relationship with the Republic and influence in the military places them above the other planets represented in the Senate as unelected galactic enforcers. It is especially worrying for the alien races which may not share or be comfortable with the Jedi's convictions. It's funny how you mentioned that the Jedi were being used as political agents by Palpatine, but you failed to mention how they were being manipulated by him. And also the fact that Palpatine is a Sith. So was that good of him to do? Or was it evil? I've heard similar arguments about how Christianity or religions claim to bring peace and love, but are the results of so many wars. Rest assured that this anti-religious talking point is not rooted in reality. The only wars that they ever bring up are the Inquisitions or the Crusades from like 700 years ago. Again, another case of those Christians not living up to the standards of Christianity, despite there being some nuance in those situations as well. But if we look back at just the 20th century, more wars and more deaths have been at the hands of atheist leaders than religious ones. And the death toll isn't even close. Mao, a fervent atheist, killed between 40 and 80 million people, at least 7 million people killed by Stalin, and he was very anti-religious and attempted to stamp out religion in the Soviet Union. Hitler killed around 11 million people, 6 million of whom were Jews. I've heard some people argue that Hitler was a Christian, and I find that very funny since the people making those claims are often very adamant about evidence, yet insist that Hitler was a Christian, which would require him to be subservient to the one that they called the King of the Jews. And he murdered, I don't even know how many Christians and priests who spoke against him. When it comes to worldviews that benefit the masses, just look at the past 100 years. Atheism doesn't even crack the top 10 worldviews that you should consider. Back to the argument about the Jedi specifically aligning with the Republic and fighting their enemies. Is it not righteous to fight for what you believe is morally correct? Or only when the ones fighting are on your side? Isn't this the atheist point of view? Morality is relative, so isn't it good for the Jedi to fight for the side that they believe is right? You wouldn't impose your moral worldview on the Jedi and tell them that they're wrong for doing that, would you? If you pay attention, you'll notice this theme come up from atheists time and time again. You are evil and immoral for fighting for your convictions if they conflict with mine, while I get to be philosophically inconsistent. The Sith embrace honesty. The Sith may have a dark history, but they make no compunctions about hiding it. They are explicitly honest in their intentions, from Darth Maul's visceral howls of revenge to Sidious's open veneration of Luke's anger towards his father. This contrasts the Jedi, who shroud their objectives in moral piety, breaking their own rules, and often cause as many problems as they solve in their ventures across the galaxy. Despite the sanctimony the Jedi present themselves with, the Sith are astonishingly more straightforward in their goals. Honesty is certainly a virtue, but what this author just described is that evil is morally acceptable as long as you're forthcoming about it. You can have someone being very honest and open about how racist they are, but they're still racist. I can be honest about my intention to kill 100 people, but I would still be morally reprehensible. And some Jedi might act in piety, but their standards, their Jedi code, does act in keeping them held accountable. If they break the rules or they act dishonestly, it's not only frowned upon, but can be cause for discipline. This author would rather praise evil intentions and actions because they're forthcoming, but criticize Jedi's righteous actions because they can sometimes cause unforeseen problems. If you attempt to rescue someone from a burning building and inadvertently cause the death of 2 other people in the building, it is not the moral equivalency of being the person that set the building on fire with the intention of killing everyone in it, especially if part of the argument is that it's good for the person that lit the building on fire to at least let everyone know that's what he was doing. I mentioned earlier in the video that the greatest pursuit in our culture is yourself. You are your own God, speak your own truth, find yourself, look inward towards yourself. Morality is relative unless it personally offends you. Place yourself first always. You're your own God, you're your own master, etc. What I found is that conventional secular wisdom is almost always contrasted with that of God, like it's polar opposite. So when our culture tells you that something is right or good, it's most likely not. There's only one God worthy of devotion, and it's not you. Don't speak your truth, speak the truth. Find yourself, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. You are enough. Have you met you? Jesus is more than enough for all of us. He's enough to save us, to provide for us, to bless us, to equip us, to strengthen us. Look inward towards yourself. Why? Have you not failed yourself enough? Look to God, man. Put yourself and your happiness above everything else. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry that it's been a while since my last upload. I really only do these when I have some spare time, which I don't have a whole lot of, but I'm hoping to do some more in 2025. Hopefully we'll get to do some more Star Wars ones too. That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.